What is up, guys? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Jesus Conde, and today we're going to be painting an apple pie by a request from one of you on the comment section. And first of all, I wanted to thank my Patreons for being there all this time and supporting this channel and making this tutorial. Thank you very much. Alright, so let's get started. So the first thing that we're going to do is a sketch, although this is not kind of like a sketch. This is kind of like in between. It's not a line art, it's not a sketch, it's something that allows me to paint and have the whole idea organized. I'm not looking to do something extremely clean, but not too rough either. So when you do this exercise, just do whatever you feel more comfortable with. To me, the clearer it is, the better, but I don't want it to be like extremely tight line. So it's kind of like the same approach that I use when I'm doing my comic book, which is not like extremely clean line, but it's good enough so everything is readable and looks decent. Right now I'm just focusing on all the shapes and to be readable and easy for me to understand what's going on. Alright, so the next step will be to fill that with flat color. That flat color is going to allow us to create a clipping mask on this layer. And you can do this by just filling, without going outside the line, filling this cake, this pie, as whatever. You can use whatever color you want. The only thing that you will have to do later is when you go into the next step, you're gonna create a new layer and you're gonna press Alt between that new layer and this one. So everything that you're gonna paint is gonna stay inside of this flat color, and it's wonderful because everything is already cut out for you to paint freely. So it's kind of like a limit to your brush strokes, right? So the next step will be base color, which is exactly as it sounds. You're gonna put a color that is gonna be the base for everything that you're gonna do on top later. And it's very simple, don't overthink it. I will say it's whatever you think is the pure color of what you're painting. Here I'm trying to give some color variations to this part of the pie, and it's kind of like I'm trying to make it be not too flat. Like I wanted to have a little bit of color changes, and this part, which is kind of like is the pure apple, the center of the thing. It's kind of I'm going to a neutral color. Like it's not yellowish, it's not like reddish. It's kind of like orange. But it's kind of dull, right? And this syrup kind of a thing, I was thinking, well, it has to be something also in between, because that darkish color that it has, it seems like it's more of a shadow kind of a thing, of the density of the syrup and not the color itself. The color itself should be something like in the middle of it. So in this next step, that's where we're going to focus: the shadows, volume, and occlusion. And it was tricky. I decided to start with the occlusion, which is sometimes the simple way to start, because you can is basically try to put some darkness between the objects or the surfaces that are really tight between each other. So those cracks have to be filled with a little bit of darkness. Like it could be whatever, similar to the color that you're already using, or it could be black, depending. I didn't want to go full black on this one, so I decided to put a little bit of brownish color. Now I filled in a really dark color for this side of the pie, this face of this kind of like triangle looking thing, because the light is going to be coming from top and a little bit from the back, so we can have that volume there, like, which is darkened to the front, to us. And here I kind of jumped the gun and added some light colors, but I really shouldn't have. It's just something that I felt like I had to do. um I should have said that for the for the subsurface scattering, but yeah, I added a little bit of that just to have some color variations. Although I should have either done it on there I erased a little bit. I should have done it on the later steps. I added even more darkness to the face that is facing us, to the part that is facing us from the pie, and also I'm adding more and more shadow occlusion from the syrup to the other part of the surfaces. And I decided to add these little dots and kind of like texture to the crust of the pie, because I wanted to have that little bit of texture, like it's not really flat. There's something there, so it has little variations of volume, and like it has some little dark bits on it. It's hard to interpret what is shadow and what is like pure color of the object of the of the food. But yeah, and the zero part, I interpret it as is this is kind of like darkish because there's more density, and also because it's in the dark part of this object. I'm referring, when I say object, I'm talking about the slice of pie. um so this part are kind of like darkened just because it's also in shadow. But it's mostly because how dense it is in that spot. The less dense, the clearer it should look like. It should look. And of course, we need a little bit of shadow on the ground to make it look like it belongs somewhere. If we don't do that, it will seem like it's floating or something like that, and we don't want it to look like that. And it should be the right amount. So a little bit of occlusion where it's even more close to the object, and then a soft shadow on the rest of the cast shadow. And now we're going to be working on the highlights. So this is the part that is going to be more important, I guess, in this tutorial because of the type of material. Because this is a very reflective material, all of these highlights should be very, very thin looking and very line kind of looking because of the shape. If you look at it, it's kind of like cylinders sliding down and then turning themselves into some kind of like spheres that are also squashed. So keeping that in mind, all the highlights are kind of like lines but deformed, and sometimes they have little bits and dots. So that's the kind of highlights that you should do in this type of surface, which is a very reflective surface. It's also wet. It's kind of like very yeah, it's very reflective. That's it. So there's nothing too much to say about that. Only that keep in mind that if you do just dots, it will read as something spherical, and these are not spheres. These are mostly like long shapes. So all these highlights should kind of look like spread out in some kind of a line, kind of a effect, kind of a way. If you don't do it like that, it won't read properly to the people that is looking at it. Here I decided to darken this part so I could add some highlights there, because this part of the pie, the surface, is kind of also reflective, but it's hard. So it's not the same kind of reflection. It's more spread out. It's more open. Um, it's also is reflecting the light a lot, but it's not like the wet part. It's not like the apple part. It's more. It's just more flat. So you will get this more spread out kind of a effect. Here, even that I shouldn't, I am reinforcing those shadowy parts. Alright, so now we are on the bounce light reflections and source of scattering phase. And here I'm trying to add a little bit of source of scattering, which is where the things are less dense, the light kind of gets through and fills it. So it's kind of it's just places where it is not that dense. Specifically, the tip of this shape, which is these apples, just at the tip of the pie, at the tip of the slice, are kind of they should be lighter. The more on the back they are, it's like more dense. So there's more density. So it shouldn't look like that light. So that's why I put a lot of light on the tip of the slice of pie. And also all kind of like all the edges should kind of look soft, so having a little bit of color there will also hint that there is sort of scattering going on. um, Mostly all the parts where the light hits and is probably a transparent kind of an object, even though some things you would think are not that transparent, they are. Here I decided to add gray to the reflections on the syrup because of the environment we're in. We're in a gray area, and we should reflect that on the on the surfaces. And if we don't do that, it will look completely fake, like it doesn't belong to this scene. And as final detail, I decided to do a couple of things. Like first, just having different tones on the apples. So some of them could be a little bit more cooked than others, or it couldn't even be that. It could be just more subsurface scattering, and it just shows up as a really orangey kind of color. And also, I decided to add these small bits and pieces to the I don't know how to call that. Let's call it the surface or the outside of the pie. All that part, it's kind of like his own material, and it's totally different from what it's on the inside. So it had this little yeah, like dots, pieces falling off and like sticking out. So all of that is necessary to put that there in order to make it look like it's something completely different that was from the inside. And I'm also adding this shadow kind of a thing to reflect that these shapes inside of the pie are not perfect. So you have these kind of like things going on the inside that are like shadows that deform the the shapes a little bit. It's just as to make it look like it's not perfect. This is not just perfectly cut a slice of pie. It's something going on there. Um, we keep doing a little bit of that. I want to say breath kind of material, and also being very careful with how much detail I put in. If I put way too much detail, then it could look like it will start to look like some parts are way more detailed than others, and it will kind of like disconnect. Although sometimes you want to do that, I just don't want to do it in this case. It's not really that necessary. What else can I say? Well, trying to make sure that the parts that need light are actually lit, and double checking kind of like everything to make sure that looks okay. We're pretty much getting to the end of this tutorial, and I think it's looking pretty good. The syrup is one of the things that once you add those highlights, it really does make a difference. So if you're not completely sure of what you're doing, just remember that these syrups are like cylinder shape. They're basically tubes falling down and melting. So the highlights should look like lines melting too. They should be flowy. They should be deformed and bright because it's really reflective kind of material. And yeah, well, thank you very much for watching this tutorial. I really hope you liked it and learned something. If you want to support this channel, please consider getting on Patreon so you can also see these videos earlier and have access to everything else that I do. Wallpapers, the chapters on my comic book, everything is there. Thank you very much. See you next time.